was quite excited to do this panel because one of the things that keeps coming back to me through my conversations with service providers, vendors, is that the cost basis and how we actually understand the economics of how CX works changes quite drastically, both in terms of how much it's costing us to serve customers, but then also, how we actually price and understand and control costs and things like that. And obviously, we just heard from the talk from Five9, a lot of CEOs coming in saying, let's cut workforce, but obviously that's not a clean picture, as I think we all understand. So I think we can talk a little bit just about where the CX landscape is in terms of changing cost. I mean, maybe just an initial response from the panelists. I mean, seat license pricing, do we feel like that's changing?
I think it's changing a bit, for sure. There's a lot of carriers out there, not carriers, there's a lot of CX providers out there that do have consumption-based pricing. And I don't mean tokens or anything like that. It's like a resolved cases. You'll see that from a Zendesk. You'll see it from what was Intercom, now Fin. You'll see it from a lot of different providers out there. And there's businesses built on it. Decagon, as an example, is a new CX provider out of San Francisco. You'll see a lot of those models sort of taking hold.
I'm gonna go. Is that all right?
Yeah, go on, please.
Yeah, so I'm coming through the lens of like a Microsoft systems integrator. So work with certified Teams products and also Dynamics 365 contact center. But so we've got hero SKU licensing per seat, and we've got add-on licensing if they've got customer service, for example, with a Dynamics product. But then, a shift to consumption with things like Copilot credits. And increasingly, obviously, there's got to be monetization there for Microsoft, but also there's the opportunity there for partners in the network if they're CSPs and selling licensing. I think Finbar kind of mentioned something before. The tricky thing with that in terms of cost for Microsoft solutions is being able to accurately scope that. And we're trying to be transparent and honest with our customers. So they kind of know, rather than it just be, this is a seat cost, and then down the line, suddenly they're looking at the total cost of ownership being like way off what they thought it was originally.
I don't think anyone's got it right yet.
Okay, come on.
Is the answer. Because I think it's a mixture. So going towards an outcome-based approach, it's how do you define the outcome? How do you get the outcome agreed? I think we talked on numerous panels today. It's very difficult to drive a consistent agreement on what the outcome should be, even at the program level. And then you've got from a tokenization standpoint, where are the guardrails, how do you build the guardrails into that? So I think it's a mixture. I think it's a combination of seat-based, tokenization, but with real governance around the outside. And I think that's where the partners come into this. So I come from a company called IPI, so we are very much on the service provider side. And that's where the partners add the value in terms of understanding the customers and being able to define specifically what works best for the customer.
Interesting. So sorry, Mark, do you want to jump in?
I was just going to say that it's exactly right. It's a little bit early. We come at it from a SaaS development company, so our, is basically CX as a customization. And so, whether that be at the service provider and what it means for their service delivery team or a reseller or an end user customer that's managing their voice, there's all kinds of different CX that goes into it, and then understanding, like, what are you identifying as the place where AI is beneficial? So is that in the actual code that your developers are using and writing code? Is it in the AI that you probably put in your product, specifically to make your product better? And then the AI that maybe goes into the operational efficiencies of running your business. So there's a lot of different places where it matters. And so it's not just a clear-cut, case of, it just means seat or tokenization or usage, because there's a lot of different experiences that you can, have in that environment.
Okay, I like that takeaway. So a bit of a development into maybe more of a mixed model. So you brought up AI, and I think that's a really interesting question. A lot of people in the room are going to have questions about AI costs. And there is a question as to whether AI is making things cheaper in the short term or not. I mean, what do people think about that? Is AI making things cheaper, or is it costing more?
I'll go from this end.
Okay.
I'll leave some good stuff for you guys down the other end, though. Is certainly from perspective of us working with clients, I think there is no quick win and like major cost reduction in terms of the product and the investment. I don't think necessarily, it's spiraling professional services for the project. It's more just the client needs to kind of have an expectation that things are going to change over time with costs. And as I said, being kind of honest, open, transparent with that, having that approach with the customer. Things are moving at such a pace for all of us in the industry that we're trying to keep, whether it's Microsoft or it's someone else, pricing models are changing all the time. So it's trying to keep up with that, really. And I don't think costs are necessarily coming down. Having that investment, there's a big shift from legacy. So we've got this legacy investment for customers where they've been milking those platforms for a long time, whether it's PBX or it's CCaaS platform, it's contact center platforms. And so there will need to be a significant investment, but that will drive greater improvements with CX down the line. It will, but initially we might have a lump, and then we might have some lumps for a little bit more, and then we'll smooth that curve out.
That's exactly where we sit, I think. You see the price increase because you are consumption based on this product or outcome based on that product, but you're going to see, I think ultimately we see customers' prices going up right now, but with the expectation that they are going to go down. I think the customers listening to things that are coming down, like the LLM costs are being driven down dramatically, and every component of the CX solution now includes multiple portions of the LLM. But I think the costs are ultimately increasing right now, but they will decrease.
But that's costs relative to what? So if you look at when we were before AI, we were at our peak, we were hiring 10 to 15 developers a month. And we're not running a bloated business to where if you implement AI that you're going to have a 40% reduction. We're looking at getting a magnitude greater of performance out of the 200 developers that we have today. And so sure, our token costs and things have gone through the roof. I mean, that's real. But if you look at it compared to hiring 10 or 15 developers a month, then it's relative to that. You're getting the performance boost. You're able to deliver more products and services, but you're not having to have the expense of all of those hiring because you've built the proper AI harness to build properly. And so you're getting that boost. And so yes, there's definitely costs over here, but you're reducing over here. So it kind of balances out.
Yeah, what's that? What's the outcome that you're measuring though? Because Uber did the same thing, right? Uber had they just came out last week or 2 weeks ago saying they deployed Cloud Code across everybody, but they have no way to kind of show the value of what that what that looks like to them. But for you, does that mean increased features that are part of your platform that would have taken you 2 years to build out? Now it's taking you 2 months.
100%. Yeah. So the number of things that we get to build out, how fast we go, the number of features, and when you turn those features, you turn them immediately into revenue. And so then you have both the expenses there and then the revenue offset of what that means. And so yes, I mean that's what I want is to take 200 developers and make them efficient as 2,000.
It sounds like people in the room might be running into a narrative that customers that you are going to spend more money with us now, but maybe it's going to work out in the long run because you'll have a more efficient system. You'll have to pay less for it.
I think it's inevitable. If you look at the contact center space, I think you mentioned it, Chris, there, in terms of someone who's coming from more of a legacy background, 30 to 50% of the cost that customer is going to pay is going to be AI related, right? So, but ultimately, I think you talked about it there in terms of the efficiency gains, and I think that talks to what a customer is going to actually realize in terms of you're not replacing people, you're supercharging people, you're enabling people to do more, be more capable. I think that's one of the actual key things that we're going to see over the next couple of years.
Right. I mean, so there's the three pieces that we've identified are code development, product enhancement, and operational efficiencies of the business itself. And so, when we implement AI as, say, New Wave as a company, then we're tying all of our data sources together. We're making our teams communicate better with each other. And so again, there's also, I won't have to hire so many people in certain departments because now those departments are working better together. And so, again, it's understanding the expenses and the revenue and the efficiencies that go into it, and all of those things kind of coalesce into, are you getting the benefits out of the token costs and other things that go into it? And so you have to have some really good P&L and other things to tracking all of those pieces. And it's not always tangible to just dollars and cents, but also, customer experience that you're giving to your customers because you're delivering services faster. There's less customer service headaches, all of the above.
You're the perfect use case.
And I'll pivot it back to the CX piece because Mark, you're talking about coding specifically, right? But from a CX perspective, I think it becomes easier to justify even though I think we've had a lot of discussion about ROI, right? And it's like if you can see the outcome, and when I say outcome, I don't want to be general when I speak about outcomes. Just if you see an outcome you sold more, right? You had more opportunities come in. Somebody booked more appointments for you because you weren't open after hours, and now you are open after hours. From a CX perspective, I think that's fairly easy to quantify, which allows, I think, sort of that increase in revenue to propel forward. I wouldn't see new organizations like that. I'll say Decagon again, but new organizations that provide some CX like that. I don't think you'd see them scale as fast as they are if they weren't delivering ROI that's demonstrable.
I just mentioned something there on kind of cost again. Is I think there's beyond the licensing then, and an opportunity for partners working with customers. Certainly, again, coming from Microsoft lens, is that with the product or with all products at the moment, they're moving so fast that those QBRs, or that constant trusted partner relationship that you have, is going to mean that beyond the initial lump and phase of a deployment, actually then there's going to be spend along the way, and there should be, to actually take the benefit from the platforms, not just Microsoft, that as they develop. So whether something gets built into the product, needs to be rolled out, there's training and adoption, so on and so forth. Maybe they can self-serve or whatever, but it means that the relationships between partners and customers will become, we've talked about trusted partner forever, but it's going to become even more important really to have those relationships, I feel.
But it does raise an interesting point. I mean, if we move to this consumption model where we're charging people for their AI usage, I mean, you're incentivized to keep them using the platform, to use up all their credits, use up all their tokens, get the most benefit out of them. But then as a trusted partner, your goal should be to reduce the amount they're using or relying on the platform, because the more efficient their customer experience is, arguably the less tokens they'll need to spend each month, right?
Well, this is where the right harness comes into play, right? Because it's changing every day, and what's normal today isn't going to be normal in 3 days. And so if you have the right harness built and you're using a multimodal, back-end system, and if somebody changes their pricing, you're instantly pivoting to something else, you really have to be providing AI infrastructure as a service, because the normal company is not going to have the ability to build the right harness and have context and memory and all these things that go into it. And so, if you develop the right harness, and then you can pivot very quickly and have certain LLMs that are working on certain tasking that's efficient for them, and different tasks that go to someplace else, that's the key. And that's what's going to be important moving forward, is working with the right company that has the right harness.
I don't think the average company knows what a harness is.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Not yet.
I'd agree with that.
If I was to interpret that for the audience, really what you're saying is that as partners and people selling this service, you need to understand that we have to be able to build the way that they can switch between different models, so that if ChatGPT turns around tomorrow and says, no, our cost per consumption to please our investors is going up 20%, you as a company can say, well, that's fine, because you can switch to Claude or Mistral or any of the other ones.
Exactly. And then you have to have ISO 42001, which is the specific AI ISO that goes around to that, so that when you're building a harness and you're putting these products out, that security it's wrapped in security from day one.
I just go a step back from that to the point you made, Finbar, is that some of the customers that we work with, we operate enterprise, mid-market, we work also with the SMB. They just don't have the systems, they don't have the processes, they don't have access to the data. There's a customer we were working with recently where they had a customer in their CRM that appeared 4 times under 4 different names. So the underlying infrastructure, knowledge, and experience to be able to get to that point, I think, is critical in terms of the success factors.
Yeah, like clean data is more important now than it ever has been.
But that, of course, itself is a cost spend up front that someone has to absorb before they start to see any ROI. Sending someone to polish your data for a month.
But ultimately, that's the homework that needs to be done, right? So AI by itself is a multiplier. So stick AI on top of something that works, and it will amplify the good. Stick AI on top of something that's bad, it will amplify the bad. So, getting into that type of conversation, it's about, you've got to do your homework. You've got to get the infrastructure correct before you start talking about pilots.
There's just, projects where it's lift and shift. I hate that phrase so much. Please, can we stop using it? Can you just give me what I've got but on a new platform? And then saying, well, can you switch Copilot off as well? Like, what's the point? Because they're scared. I get that to some degree. That's for us to make it trusted. But a lot of it is down to the data they've got and just being worried about that. So, challenging times ahead.
I think this creates an interesting point in the industry, right? Because to this point, we've talked about upfront spend. We've talked about data cleaning, whatever you want to call it. We've talked about the lump sum that might be spent to get AI working. I'm sitting there, maybe I'm in the mid-market or I'm in the SME or I'm the board of enterprise. I don't have a huge technical team. AI is changing so quickly. Everyone keeps telling me it's changing really quickly. And I'm being asked to spend this money today on something that may be really good tomorrow. How is the safe answer, and I'm sure people have heard this from their customers, not let me wait until next year, let me wait another 2 years. Like, let me challenge you on that. Like, why do I spend now and why do I not spend in 2 years' time?
I think there's an opportunity for you to take specific workflows that don't necessarily need a whole bunch of data and see ROI just on those specific. They could be specific skills, they could be specific integrations. And when I say specific integrations, maybe it's an integration to if you're a US provider like Bandwidth or Cinch as an example that do your porting for numbers as an example. I don't have to have any historical data about anything if I'm ingesting information from a customer and then submitting it. Now, if the customer may submit bad data, doesn't matter, that could fall out and we can have a loop process where you go fix it a bit more, right? But ultimately, there are a ton of functions in an organization that you can do without data. They're business processes. You create a markdown file essentially of what the process looks like, and it's that role, whatever that role may be, becomes a bundle of functions that can execute without specific data or deep hierarchical data.
So that's actually really fascinating. I realize I do have like more technically minded people on the panel as well. So I guess maybe
I'm not.
That's all right. If you can follow, we're doing a good job. But I guess people in the audience maybe don't understand the cost differential between the probabilistic and the deterministic types of AI. Because if you think, oh, I put an LLM in front of it, and this is how much it costs, but actually there are a lot cheaper ways of doing something similar. Can we just explore that for a second? I think it'd be interesting.
Like if you want to self-host Gemma 4 with like Olala and how
no,
self-host.
Now you're getting.
I'm like, where do you want to go with this?
I just mean in terms of if a customer's calling you up and asking you a question, the easiest way to service that, the cheapest way, is to break it down without bringing Gen AI in all the way. It's to understand how it goes and then fire up some deterministic workflows to solve it. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, I'll let somebody else go. Anybody else want to take a stab at that?
I've gone completely.
I don't understand.
By the way, but
I don't understand the question, Finbar.
Are you talking about specific, like a use case based way that says, break the problem down into something that's not necessarily easy to fix, but quick to fix?
More templatized, right? Where you can start to, so that's kind of what I'm talking about with AI infrastructure as a service. So we're working, with an in-house project that we call Nebula, which is exactly that, is that a lot of the people out there don't have the ability to build a harness. They don't understand the context and all the things that go into it. And there isn't that talent. And if you're asking, why not wait? Well, if you wait, you're going to always be waiting because there's so many things that are happening. And so that's what the problem that we're taking now is to say we want to deliver this service and we want to simplify it and templatize it as much as possible to have the integrations that most, and if you're targeting mid-size and down, because they're the ones that don't have the money for the AI talent, and you have to basically make it a template to where you can say, here's your typical data sources that you're going to connect, here's the dashboard that's going to give you the token usage that you have in real time so that you can track and monitor, here's the, we have a whole dashboard built where it takes every single user with their permissions and it tells, what they're doing, what instances they're looking to ask the questions and take all that into account. And so then you can start to take the smaller businesses and you can give them an AI, setup for their business where they can start to automate and to get those efficiencies. But it's a big problem. I mean, there's so many different integrations that somebody can have, and so you have to really focus that in and track it, and then give them the dashboard and visibility and control over that. and be able to pivot them to the next thing when it comes out.
I'm gonna shorten that really quickly, because you could take the last 30 days of calls, you could transcribe them, and you can come out with the majority of the questions your customer base is going to ask you. If we're being specific on CX, and that has nothing to do with whatever information I'm pulling from data. Now, if you're migrating something, Chris, if you're moving from our platform and you're going from, here, let me move all this customer data, well then, yeah, you want some clean data, because it becomes really, really ugly. I'm sure a ton of people will disagree with me in here, but you can ultimately pull 30 days worth of calls and come up with a lot of the templates that Mark's talking about, and have the answers to those templates, and have the integrations to those templates.
I think all, again, through my lens is, we don't have to go for full-blown CCAS replacement as well. If there's so we're talking about whether, people should wait. Well, they can do smaller things, so they can be, as well as proof of concepts, and they might be in different parts of the business, completely from back office to front office or whatever. So from Microsoft's perspective, Copilot Chat we're using, M365 Copilot we're using, so many different Copilots. But then with Copilot Studio, we can build something that's for that particular purpose, in a customer service kind of front, and get an appetite for that use and drive efficiency in a relatively low-cost way, and then consider, well, how do we change other bits of the business? And maybe it is then a full CCAS deployment we go for, or maybe it's more agent development we go for, and empower the organisation to have the skills as well to be able to self-serve and do that with a wrapper as a partner.
That's really interesting, because you kind of both came at the same message from the same perspective, which is, if we build from the ground up as to solve specific use cases with the limited data that are needed to solve those, then we have a much more manageable, cost-effective solution, rather than going, as you say, the lift and shift approach.
Yeah.
We're also seeing, a lot of today has been focused around massive changes in the CX, right? Whether you're swapping out your CCAS platform or whatever, those sorts of things. I'm seeing a lot of customers in the mid-market, which is what we typically serve, use a lot of different point solutions. Like, they're buying voice AI from someone, right? They're buying, some other, speed to lead sort of tool from someone else, right? I'm seeing them cobble together solutions because they want to see that ROI, and so they want to see this in action. They want to, figure out how AI can help their business right now.
And I guess we have to kind of tie that then back into this. We've talked about it a bit already on the panel, but this idea of agent headcount. If we are deploying AI aggressively, to an extent, that does have to lead to a certain amount of either expansion in capacity, my business is doing more work, or I don't need as many people to do the job. So, I mean, what do we think the reality is of the industry today?
I don't think so. Currently, like, headcount reduction, like, is maybe not on the cards as much. It's the elephant in the room. Sometimes we don't want to talk about or depending on the customer you're working with. I don't know, public sector, local, regional government challenged, and maybe they're looking at cost savings. But actually, it is having that assistance for human agents to get more value from them. I think they're going to be more productive in any kind of organisation than go private sector. They drive more business. There's more revenue brought into the company, and alongside the people who are already working there, yes, there will be more and more agents and automation, but maybe there'll then be a growth in the workforce of employing more people because that organisation has grown. As a result, I'd like to think that. Maybe I'm going to be completely proved wrong and the robots are going to take over. But we'll see.
I happen to live with the CEO of a voice AI company, so I get a lot of different insights. So that's great. But I saw there was an IKEA thing, and I don't know who served IKEA as a CCAS provider, right? But and this is I think it's out in the news, so you could probably see it somewhere. But ultimately, I think they had a bunch of calls come in that were typically for designers, right? So they ended up putting a voice AI platform for their customer service, and they kept all their customer service people and turned them into designers, right? So that was a great humantic sort of a thing, right? So that was pretty cool. But that's a great sort of, it is. It's a really good story, and I think that's an effective use of AI.
Absolutely. But I think that change is going to take a lot longer than people anticipated. I think when this first started, when we first started talking about this, that was the immediate place that people went, that this is immediately going to reduce headcount in contact center CX environments. And that just isn't true. We're not seeing that in any way, shape, or form. And I totally agree with Chris. What we're seeing is kind of, yes, maybe the hiring has slowed down a little bit, but we're seeing applications of technology that superpower the person, that make the person more capable, make the person better. And ultimately, I think longer term, I think you're going to see a different type of hiring process where they're going to be looking at different types of skills coming into the business. That will be where I think then we'll then start to see.
There's opportunities, isn't there?
100%.
I'd like to think for
100%.
people working in customer service to almost pivot really, like to become maybe, I don't want to say more technical because the tools will be intuitive, but maybe they're looking after agents. Yeah. Like that's what they're doing.
They've got
a supervisor of, and there's human agents working as well, and there's all this automation going on. But yeah, God, that's going to be, super geek, but I'd find that interesting. If I was in a kind of day-to-day customer service facing role, you know, and then suddenly this new wave of technology is going to open up more possibilities for people and they can learn it relatively easily. Yeah, that's got to be good.
Who better to have the operational smarts though, right? The people who've actually done it, worked in it, run it, they're the people who know where the holes are, where the improvements can be made. They're better able to make those decisions.
Absolutely.
You know, we talked about before about the fact that you've got to get your foundations right. One of those key foundations, not just data, is operational knowledge, operational structure, process. Those are the people that know that better.
Yeah.
And I find it interesting myself because obviously we're talking about gradual change here as a picture rather than drastic change. And whenever I hear that, oh, well, if we replace 40% of our staff, I'm thinking, well, how big of an IT budget do you need to spend on new technology, right? You know, if you, as you say, slow down hiring on 2 or 3 people this year and you free up 10, 20, 30, you know, wherever they're based, however much it costs, suddenly that's a massive budget that can go into IT without worrying about 10%, 20% of your workforce, which I think is quite interesting. I wanted to drill back down on this idea of consumption-based pricing. I think it's a thing that a lot of people in the audience are going to be struggling with in some capacity. They've got, obviously, the platform costs that they have to pay. They've got some new relationship with their customers where they're dealing with overages in a way they weren't before. And it feels like there's a lot of a landscape there where we need to evolve new ways of dealing with that. I don't know if there's any sort of best practices starting to emerge on consumption pricing.
I think it's always been a bit of a challenge in like Microsoft CCaaS like world of just kind of when we've moved them from legacy platforms into, you know, when Teams Phone suddenly kind of came onto the market and then there were integrated contact centers and we were moving from real legacy I'm talking about and the PBX time. And we're still doing that anyway. Rick and I were talking about how much PBX is out there still. But when we did that, it was trying to gauge, well, and there was a bit of omni-channel. It was like, well, how much voice have you been doing at that time? And how many emails are you getting? And even that was challenging to get from certain organizations. So now we're in SaaS for a customer, and they want to move to SaaS with AI or like the modern contact center, so to speak. And if they've not got that data still, which a lot of them still haven't, then it's challenging to know what the consumption is going to be. And the uncertainty comes around, we're going to drive improvements, but we don't know how much something like Copilot is going to consume because we don't know what we were doing before, really. And things are going to get better, but like I say, kind of cost fluctuation, it's going to be a tricky thing to begin with. If, you know, like when you're trying to scope something and do pre-sales, and you ask questions about consumption across omni-channel, most businesses don't know. Enterprise scale and global enterprise, they should, and they probably have, but we could have disparate platforms for that anyway. It might not just be in one system. So yeah.
Isn't that, Chris, in the Microsoft world, wouldn't it be like the Azure consumption? Like, wouldn't Azure consumption be part of that sort of, the components they're picking out of that?
It is, yeah. So Azure Communication Services and then the Copilot credits and stuff. You know, we were building our own tools for Microsoft to be able to work out how to cost it for like the best part of a year, if not longer. So yeah, that wasn't the greatest go-to-market really to help partners understand. So a lot of complexity. But so certain partners did step in because they already had a lot of understanding of Teams phone system and the Azure platform, so to speak. And so, yeah, but as it gets more commoditized and hopefully that partner network grows and sells those platforms and other platforms, then hopefully things get easier to cost. And it'll take time for those, for customers to move to new platforms and for consumption to kind of even out. And again, it'll depend on, maybe they add more omnichannel. Maybe they've not done omnichannel before. So that's the benefit. We add SMS and we add WhatsApp, and because they were just doing email and voice.
So you got like Azure consumption, you've got per minute consumption as an example if you're using some toll-free stuff or some of the things, and then some tokenization, or then there's the outcome stuff. Yeah, like the outcome stuff is. I think people in the room probably know what the CX cost is for a person. It's what is it, like $8 to $12 or so for a contact center person, right? So you see, those are real costs that you can see. So then you go, what does an outcome look like? Well, an outcome autonomously completed costs me $1.50 to $3, depending upon who your vendor is, right? And you look at that and you go, well, that makes a lot of sense, right? That's I don't need X amount of people because I'm solving X amount of templated workflows completed, right? So that's a consumption model, but it's I see that out there more and more. And then you try to do complex things like we do, which is I break down tokens from a bunch of different services and go, all right, what does my per minute cost look like? And I can go break it down into a per minute because my customers as telco customers are used to seeing a per minute. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to charge you, 20 cents a minute. Outlandish it sounds like, but it works.
But I think that's probably an interesting point to end of the panel, because a lot of people are probably going to be wondering about this. Is it then the role of the service provider to do the work to figure out the best way their customer wants to be billed and just make it in the package they understand? I mean, is that our conclusion on consumption? It's if they understand minutes, so that I have to find a way to charge them in minutes.
I think absolutely that's the role of the service provider, right? So we get closer to the customer for a reason that allows us to define that with the customer, to bring them on the journey together with us, rather than just dictating in terms of this is the model. Understand what is the problem we're trying to fix. What's the commercial implication of that problem if we actually do fix it? What does it look like in terms of your investment profile over the next 12, 24, 36, whatever months? So I think absolutely it's down to the SP for sure.
You definitely have to do a kind of conversion, at least in the short term, while they're trying to figure out how to bill for that kind of usage. Because if you're looking at the legacy BSS OSS kind of setups, they're already set up to bill for minutes and things. And so in the short term, a conversion is probably going to be the easiest way to bill in minutes.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's a pretty interesting conclusion to end the panel on. It is lunchtime now. Thank you all so much for coming. And thank you all to our panelists for this great discussion. Before we all head off to lunch,